everybody to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. This is Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Steve Colbern. And after my initial rant, which isn't really a rant, it's just me communicating a lot of truthful points there, let's talk a little bit about what we really want to talk about, which is more happy thoughts, Peter Pan, right? I don't know if they're happy or not, Steve, but but I know before we went live, we kind of talked about a few things that you wanted to touch on pertaining to sphere sightings around the world. So you want to go there? You want to start with that?
There seems to be there's a lot of sightings of what appear to be alien probes about the size of a basketball with a glowing plasma envelope around them, and they appear to be automated and controlled by some computer system, presumably, and there's often hundreds of them in one place. Especially Mexico has had a lot of these sightings, and they've actually had some collisions between planes in these spheres and some near misses as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they've seen these structures look like snakes that hundreds or thousands of these spheres dock with. And Jaime Maussan got a lot of shots of those structures in Mexico. And one of the most interesting things that happened there was that a sphere apparently crashed back around 1995, about 200 miles south of the U.S. border on the Gulf Coast of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And the property owner said that the blast killed a cow 100 meters away, and that was probably the energy in the field getting dumped and being turned into a shock wave. And when he found that it was glowing red and there was some damage to each pole of the sphere, and the metal had apparently vaporized on each pole, probably where the energy discharge occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And he sold it to Jaime Maussan, and Jaime Maussan allowed Rick Shaw and I to examine it, and we tried to get a sample off, and the material was just super hard, and you couldn't even dent it at all in areas that were undamaged. In the areas near the poles that were damaged by heat, you could saw off pieces with a diamond tool, but just barely. And I got it home and subjected to the same analysis techniques that I used for the San Augustine UFO material, and it turned out to be titanium with heavily alloyed titanium, similar to aircraft titanium, but with nano-structures built into the metal, coated carbon nanotubes. Presumably the electronics for flight are built into the metal, and then the propulsion is probably by the Byfield Brown effect, a type of anti-gravity propulsion. And there were also cavities built into the metal to lower the density. So the average density was about the same density as aluminum, but the stuff was just ultra strong, and it was a very sophisticated structure. And
Sounds
the beauty of it is that after something like that crashed, if somebody found it, they'd just find a hollow sphere and probably think nothing of it. And all the mechanics are actually built into the metal.
Very interesting.
People have seen larger UFOs launching these things, and they're most likely the devices that make most of the crop circles as well. There's at least one video that shows that.
So do you think they're like little drones or something?
Yeah,
I mean, they're a version of a drone or what?
Yeah, it's their version of a drone, and they can do just about anything the large UFOs can do.
Wow, so they're consistent. They're plasma based then.
Yeah, there's a plasma envelope around them, and that has something to do with propulsion. And
very interesting.
There's probably microcapacitors inside the metal that can provide thrust in any direction by the Byfield Brown effect.
So do you think those are extraterrestrial, or do you think there's something with our Black Science Department, or which one?
I think our Black Science Department can probably build similar things now, but I think this is probably extraterrestrial. I wasn't able to do any isotopic analysis on it, so I don't know if it came from off-planet or not, if the material came from off-planet, but it certainly was sophisticated enough to be some kind of alien device. And
Yeah, it sounds like it.
One interesting thing is that recently, a few months back, um, a device like this apparently blew up a SpaceX booster on the pad at Cape Canaveral.
Oh, really?
You didn't hear about that? They had a pretty clear video of one of these devices coming along, just under the speed of sound, it looked like, and slowing up briefly right near the top of the rocket, and it apparently fired some kind of a beam. There was a brilliant flash right near the junction between the first and second stages, and then it blew up after that.
Very interesting. I heard that one blew up. I didn't know it was due to that, though. So it sounds like it's remotely.
It was sabotage, no doubt about it. It was either a sophisticated device from the government or an alien device.
Wow. So it's remote controlled then. Under intelligent control would be kind of remote controlled, right, or no?
They're under intelligent control, but not direct control. They're too small for any intelligent creature to fit into.
Wow, that's fascinating. So has there been more and more of these around, you say? There's an increase since the 90s?
I would say so. They first reported seeing large numbers of them in Mexico in the 90s, and the numbers have increased. They've been reported in the UK and all over the world, but Mexico seems to be the biggest hotspot for them. But most abductees are reported seeing them at one time or another.
And apparently they have something to do with the crop circles. How is that? Are they creating the crop circles?
Yeah, they create the crop circles. At least I believe they do. There's at least one video and several eyewitness reports of these devices creating the crop circles in a matter of seconds. It's known for sure that crop circles don't take long to form, but if the video is real, and I have reason to believe it is, they form in even a big complex one would be formed in less than 30 seconds.
Very interesting. So is that done through kind of a laser? How does it show how they're imprinting it or creating the crop circle?
With what I call a tractor beam, a gravity beam set to push, and the plants look like they've been exposed to high levels of microwaves and bent down.
Very interesting.
There's usually an anomalous magnetic field with a real crop circle as opposed to a hoax. The whole thing is magnetized, and exposure to alien equipment does that. I've found from investigating abductees' dwellings.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Things that don't normally magnetize will magnetize, like plant life, leaves, wood, and plastic, stainless steel, aluminum. The list goes on.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a crop circle?
No, I wanted to go a few years back, but didn't have the funding, so I wish I'd gone anyway.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had gone. I've never been in one either, but I'm looking at the ones over. I'd never go to the UK now. It's a cold day in hell before I get over there. So all the crap going on over there, anyplace else.
Yeah. I should have. I was reluctant to spend the money, and I should have just done it anyway. It was about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think they still have some here in the United States, though not as many. It seems like most of them are done. Yeah. Have you?
My son actually reported seeing one time on a trip down from Northern California, and from what I understand, when they appear in this country, they actually plow them under.
Is that right?
Yeah, most of them are messages from the aliens that are written in that way to bypass the media and government scrutiny.
Right. Well, they seem to be geometric in design. Usually when I see them in the images.
Yeah, they're geometric, and they often have to do with astronomical events, and sometimes they can appear based on telepathic requests. Like in the UK, a lot of times crop circle fanciers will get together and try to broadcast a telepathic message that they want a crop circle with a certain design, and often they appear.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Wow, I didn't hear that about the sphere, so that's something new right there. I wasn't too familiar with those. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about St. Augustine or not. Is that what you were mentioning prior to that?
Yeah. First of all, about the spheres, I think there's a worldwide network of these things that provides a real-time data feed for the aliens, and they've actually been reported in orbit by the space shuttle as well. There's some pretty good video from NASA of them if people want to look it up.
Yeah, it's very, very
And
interesting.
the St. Augustine crash site took place a few days before Roswell, and about 200 miles to the west, and on the plains of San Augustine, New Mexico. And the military did not do as good a job in sanitizing the crash site as they did at Roswell. I guess they were still practicing and developing their techniques to do so. But in any event, several pounds of alien material were found. There were what I believe is alien material were found at that crash site a few years ago, and some of it was given to me to analyze. And I believe my report on a few of those on 6 of those samples is on my website. If not, then you can contact me and I'll send you a copy.
Mm-hmm.
And the mechanical properties of the materials were not very impressive, unlike the spear sample. But there was some evidence that there might be some nanostructures inside, and some of the isotopic ratio tests indicated that there's a possibility that some of the elements came from off-planet. That was interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I know you were one of the first people that actually kind of looked into that area, weren't you, for investigation?
Yeah. Art Campbell was the initial investigator of the crash site, and he got with a guy named Chuck Wade, who got a work crew out there and found most of the volume of material. But they found everything. They found all kinds of strange stuff out there. What appears to be a plastic artificial heart, or it's made mostly out of some kind of plastic polyethylene, or it's most similar to polyethylene. Tiny shoes look like they would fit an alien, and like made out of some stretchy cloth-like material, and fragments of what could be alien spacesuit material, other pieces of plastic, stuff like that wasn't generally available in 1947. Just a very interesting crash site that's being underreported in the media. The people that talk about Roswell are afraid of any reporting of the San Augustine crash site stealing their thunder, apparently. I'm not sure why that is, but it appears to be the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, there's so many things. There's so many levels to some of this research. It's just mind-blowing to some degree. You kind of wonder where everything is and who has access to whatever materials were left behind. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, but it's really interesting how that goes. Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about the Foo Fighters and what your impression is of the Foo Fighters.
Well, I think that World War II really interested a lot of alien species in what's going on Earth, and they came in to observe. And like we discussed before, the Nazis apparently made contact with the Greys before we did, around 1932, after a crash in Bavaria, and they figured out that the aliens communicated mostly telepathically, and got some of the best psychics in Germany to try to make contact with them. They reportedly succeeded, and so they got a lot of alien knowledge, apparently, reportedly, to build their own reverse engineered craft. And they then took a lot of this technology to a base in Antarctica. They found large underground warm areas in Antarctica, and moved a lot of that technology down there. And there was strong reason to believe that the Nazi regime still exists down in Antarctica. Before the war, they were the number one South Polar researchers, and they actually laid claim to about a third of Antarctica and called it New Swabenland. And in 1946, Admiral Byrd and a large force went down to Antarctica to try to kick the Germans out, and reportedly got their butts kicked. And,
right.
After he came back to the United States after that mission, he said publicly that we needed to watch out for enemy high-speed aircraft coming from the polar regions, and said that the whole place ought to be nuked. But he never really elaborated on that.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of wondering, insofar as what's going on now. It seems to me like that whatever was there, and I kind of mentioned this prior, but I think that most of those, whatever was there, is off planet right now. I don't think they're loitering around in Antarctica. I think there's exotic remnants over there. I just don't think I don't think that initial group is still there. Do you? Or species or?
I'm not really sure what's going on there now, but I know that there's a large opening in the ground near the South Pole that's not too far from our South Polar base, and that's restricted airspace. And
Mm-hmm.
some people that had to dodge some weather in Antarctica that were flying back from the South Polar base saw it and reported on it not too long ago.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And UFO sightings are very common in Antarctica too. So there's either an alien or a joint alien-human base down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems to me like, I think I'm more into that kind of information insofar as than dealing with what's here. I think there's just so much craziness going on that doesn't need to be happening. But as I was saying, it's two worlds existing simultaneously to some degree, and it's just a matter of us staying on the higher realms and higher orbits that are much more productive.
One of my worries is that the Black Project community will just form a breakaway society and just leave Earth and just try to blow us all up with nuclear weapons or something.
Yeah, I actually think that's happened to some degree. I really think that the breakaway society is truly broken away. I mean, the initial one with the Black Science Department, because, I think, go ahead.
There's a lot of things that the aliens are not going to allow them to do, though. Otherwise, they would have done a lot worse than this already, in my opinion.
Right. Well, I still think that the Black Space Program has only a certain level of traversing the galactic highway, so to speak. I don't think they can get very far, but I still think that they're far enough away that they can have a more of an expanded reality. Let's put it that way. Versus what's here.
They won't be allowed to go very far. I mean, from my understanding, based on what Gary McKinnon uncovered in hacking into NASA's computers, is that they need an alien officer on board all of their spacecraft. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to leave low Earth orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And I doubt they're allowed to go, say, more than a few light years out. I'm not sure exactly how far they're allowed to go, but I doubt it's farther than that. Maybe they're not even allowed to go past our solar system. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm. No, considering how primordial they are, I mean, with the fact that they need to control, manipulate to such a level here on this illusion of a planet, tells me very clearly that they're not prepared to deal with higher consciousness or multidimensional levels of species. I mean, they're just not. They just live in this primordial world. And even the people in these other departments, I mean, they're just mind controlled. That's all. They have so many alters running in them. It's interesting. I'm pretty sure you probably mentioned, or maybe you didn't hear Tina, but, my producer over there at Hyperspace was talking about how CIA took over the areas, exotic areas like Area 51 2 years ago, where it was military. Yeah. So that has changed a lot. I think that's changed immensely insofar as what's going on over there, because CIA is notorious for mind games. I mean, that's all they do. Psychological warfare, mind control.
They started the whole mind control thing. They probably wanted to reverse engineer the abilities, the natural abilities the aliens have. They're experts at mind control, and all this stuff you're talking about, the aliens can do too, but they're much better at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I see more and more. Is that's what I think that's where this push has been with the covert harassment and psychotronic weapon systems, because they've been involved in a lot of overseeing, and also the fact that what they're trying to do, besides dumbing down and switching off the DNA through frequencies, they're trying to interconnect an artificial intelligence onto people's brainwaves to create that kind of a signature so that people don't expand into their higher levels of consciousness. And another thing also I wanted to point out is that there are a lot of channels out there that can get hijacked with this type of electronic interface, and they have to be really careful with that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but for the natural channels.
You mean like channeling?
Yeah, just natural spiritual channels who connect to whatever higher consciousness or entities, insofar as, I don't know if I call them entities, but extraterrestrials. But there are people out there who are conduits who do channel a lot of different things.
I hadn't heard much about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they could hijack that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
makes perfect
they
sense.
do a lot of heterodyning. They run an interference. Basically, they're hijacking the neural circuits on the target. They're running an interference program to hijack all of the communication. It's the same thing they would do when they want to run interference on a satellite or on somebody else's information that's bouncing through. So it's basically the same way. They're just trying to run interference in the transmission of signal. But it does happen, and I'm concerned about a lot of people out there who quote-unquote claim to do a lot of channeling, because if they're hearing certain things with a synthetic telepathy, you've got to use discernment. But I'm pretty sure, I give them a heads up that needs to be done. But I find it such a disservice. I think the more that we know about this, the more we can disclose it, and then we have more clarity insofar as what we need to deal with.
It can be dangerous spiritually as well, was my understanding, but now it's dangerous in that way as well, about opening yourself up to government attack.
Well, we're all hosts and conduits of energy, transmitting and receiving. But yeah, I mean, I know because of where I've been interfaced with the artificial intelligence and the synthetic telepathy and everything else. And they initially opened that up for artificial telepathy communication, live feed, real time. And then later on, they can run all kinds of different programs. Once they open you up to the communication system, they can run anything. And that's the problem people are running into. I'm smart enough to know what that technology is about. I don't know if many other people are out there really are that savvy about it, but they need to be, because that's part of this new agenda, the New World Order agenda, electronic God. That's really what it boils down to. But yeah. So what's on your list of to-dos? I mean, your bucket list. Do you have anything that's pending right now? I know we talked about you working on your book that you're supposedly supposed to have out in January.
Yeah, I'm working on the book, and one thing I'd like to do if I had funding is I started a project to investigate this alien dye that fluoresces a brilliant blue that's left behind on people's carpets and on their bodies frequently after an abduction, and it's almost indelible and doesn't wash off. It takes up to a month to go away after it's on people's bodies. You have to basically wait till the skin wears off, and on carpet it stays there for years or indefinitely. And I would like to analyze that. I've done a few preliminary steps in analyzing it. I got a fluorescent spectrum, and I also tried to extract the dye from some carpet I gathered from a couple of abductees' houses and do an NMR and an FTIR. And the signal was really low because the extraction efficiency was really low. It won't come off the substrate it's on. It's almost indelible. And that's probably by design, but I got enough information to know that it has an indole ring in it, which is interesting because indole rings are present in the neurotransmitter serotonin and also in certain hallucinogenic drugs. And so it could be something that increases the power of their telepathy or could have any number of effects, but at any rate, it has a group called an indole ring in it, and I'd like to be able to get a complete chemical analysis of the entire structure, and I'd need to collect more of the dye and find a better extraction method, and do several more tests to do that, and that would require more funding, but it should be very interesting if we could get the complete structure of that compound.
Yeah, it is. So how often do you find that dye?
Pretty frequently. When I'm investigating abductees' dwellings, I find it at least 50% of the time.
Very interesting. Wow.
And it's often left behind on their bodies as well if they've had a recent abduction.
So,
if they've been abducted within the last week or so, it's very frequently left behind.
That's very, very interesting. I don't know if I had the blue dye. That's the blue one?
Yeah, you had some of that. You had some of the blue and some of the yellow-green, as I recall.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's on film, too. We have that footage. But, yeah, very, very interesting. I'll tell you what. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what kind of research you can get insofar as... I wish you had the funding to do that. But, yeah, everybody, please donate if you can over to Steve's website because this is important research. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I haven't published any of that yet. That was a little bit premature. But I've just been mentioning on shows like this that we have a little bit of information, and there's definitely an indole ring in the compound. And there's another yellow-green dye that seems to be something from their skin, and there's an orange dye that is some sort of marker dye, but I don't have any chemical data on that yet.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd like to know what the chemical compositions are in these things, and I don't think it's anything that people can excrete themselves, right? Naturally?
No, it's highly unlikely. People don't really excrete things that contain indole rings, to my knowledge.
Right, doesn't sound about.
Serotonin is kind of a rare compound in the body, for example, and it's not excreted, it's just in the brain acting as a neurotransmitter.
Right, very, very interesting. And I would imagine that most abductees and most contactees, obviously, when you're having interface with any type of communication or an extraterrestrial, the brainwave activity has to change to some degree, wouldn't it?
yeah, I'm not sure how it changes, but it stands to reason it has to change because when most people are interfacing with the ETs, they're under mind control, and
Mm-hmm.
the brainwaves almost certainly change, maybe to a delta pattern like in sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's anybody's guess, though. It's speculation at this point, but
Right.
I'd be very surprised if the brainwave patterns do not change, and that probably also accounts for why people don't remember, because they're
Mm-hmm.
in a hypnotic state during the abduction.
Right. But then they
Um,
put the screen memories in. But that's not them putting the screen memories. It would be more covert my lab, wouldn't it?
no, the aliens definitely put screen memories in. There's
Oh,
no
they
doubt
do.
about
Okay.
that, and my labs, I'm sure, got the whole idea from them, and
Mm-hmm.
they also, I have reason to believe, set up a different personality track for abductees that they're going to take a lot. Kind of like in the movie Total Recall, where Arnold had his Earth personality and Mars personality, Quaid and
Mm-hmm.
Hauser,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's in those cases that's why they don't remember. The memories are still there, but they're on a different personality track that you can't access. Only they
Right.
can access it.
Well, that sounds
Put
just
you
like
on
mind
that, put you
control.
back on that track. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're experts at mind control.
It's amazing. Yeah, but that's you are right. That's where covert intel probably got all their information. Just reverse engineering or
Oh yeah,
hijacking a lot of things. Sure
no doubt in
mirrors
my
it.
mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Amazing. But yeah, I kind of wonder about that. But it makes sense that there would create a person. I like the way you worded that personality track because in covert intel and mind control, they would use alters. So I think the personality track is a little more analytical and it's a very neutral, positive way to describe what's going on.
yeah, I kind of like an 8-track tape where you can just switch
Right.
back and forth between
And
one
it's a
and the other.
program. You know what it is,
Yeah,
Steve? It's a program. We would look at it once
yeah, it's
again.
a
It's a
program.
supercomputer.
Yeah,
Yeah. And,
they usually put a personality into the person that's similar but not identical to their normal personality, so they won't reject it,
right.
and they make certain changes that are more to their advantage
Yep. Totally.
and use that personality for when that person is with them.
Yeah. Well, mixing of signals, that's what they do with the EEG cloning and heterodyning. They take different brainwave templates and they interface them onto the target, and it could be a totally different person. That's how they train a lot of their collectives. And once again, it kind of it dovetails into extraterrestrials as well. So very, very interesting right there. But yeah, and that's the saddest
Yeah,
part of all is because we're such beautiful beings with our own higher self, oversoul, superconscious, and when they start tampering, I think the brain is a very sacred thing, and you have to be very careful how you interfere with that, or they do. And it's just when I look, I'm talking about the covert intelligence programs, the people in the military, and I think that they just are kind of reckless sometimes. They just don't seem to. It's like they don't know what they're
yeah.
doing.
I agree. I mean, I think the aliens take a lot more care than our government would doing this. I mean, they act like people are just disposable a lot more than the aliens do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well,
And
everybody's
citizens,
collateral damage. That's the whole
yeah,
thing. It's
collateral damage.
experimental. Even the people who they pull in for their extreme military, I mean, they're collateral damage too. All of them get used. They get chewed up and spit out. So, but somebody's making an awful lot of money at this. I can tell you that much. In these black science departments, somebody's made an awful lot of money. DARPA's made a lot of money in these areas.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all about money. I mean, when you trace down everything that's happening on this planet with government and politics, money drives the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they'll do anything for money. There's no limits to what these military and political types would do for money.
Right.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's bizarro. I tell you what. I'm sure you guys can hear me at Studio A, right? Because I just saw that our studio just came online, and I thought that doesn't make any sense because I have Studio A pulled in. So let me know, guys, if you've been hearing me in the chat room. I'm pretty sure you have. So that's weird. That's really strange. I just saw that come online. Interesting, Steve.
Studio A came online. What do you mean?
Well, I pull in Studio A for the show, and that I just saw it come online. And I'm like, well, it's been online hopefully all this time, right?
Well, hopefully, yeah.
That's so weird. But yeah, I'm sure they would have screamed at me in the chat room if not. But that was very, very interesting that I saw that. Very much so. So what are some of the aliens that you're familiar with that you think are the more dominant insofar as what's going on here? And so far as species goes, which one do you think is the most controlling and has the most influence?
Well, I have most of my experiences with the Greys, and they're an alliance of similar species, maybe 7 different species. The short Greys with bluish gray skin that are about between 4.5 and 5.5 feet tall in general. Are the ones most people report seeing, and that do most of the abductions. And there's another member of the Gray Alliance, species that's a member of the Gray Alliance, so tan grays that are kind of like the ones on the cover of Whitley Strieber's book Communion, if you're familiar with that. And they kind of have more angular faces, and they're somewhat taller, and they have a little bit more emotion. The short grays don't really have too much emotion. A lot of them are more like automatons. The tan grays are more like individuals, and maybe a little more creativity. And there's tall whites that are more like kind of like a blend of human and gray, and the military has done a lot of work with them. And there's a few other gray species that I know I've seen, but I'm not really familiar enough with them to describe them too well. And once in a while you see reptilians or gray hybrids or Pleiadians, very tall, good-looking, humanoid-looking aliens or human-looking aliens aboard ship. Other abductees, of course.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Yeah, I was always curious as to which one was the more dominant. But in your interpolation of them as a species,
dominant, I would say that the tans and the tall whites are probably the most dominant in the Gray Alliance.
Okay. And what do you think their expertise is? Like gifts?
Their expertise is seems from, I'm just trying to remember, but it seems like the expertise of the TANs is time travel and different types of medical technology, and the tall whites have a lot of high technology that the other species don't have, but I'm not familiar with exactly what it is. I don't think they told me.
I was always curious insofar as what their specialty was, but I would say most of it is well, there's so much advanced technology, and I think that's the biggest thing is their ability to be able to change reality and really master that through whether it's technology or frequencies.
Yeah, I've known for a long time they have time travel. They tried to use it sparingly, but they've got it. I think the government may have it too, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the illusion of speeding things up and slowing things down, that's the biggest thing. It's all about frequency, modulation of frequency. And that's another thing too, I think we might have touched on this on my show Hyperspace, but talking about the Schumann resonance and how that spiked up, but also the fact that CERN seems to be sitting there kind of ominous and always wondering what that thing's doing, in between the spaces of their experimentation.
I wouldn't really worry too much about the reports of CERN creating a black hole that's going to absorb the Earth or anything like that, but it could be doing other things that we're not even aware of that might alter reality. But I don't think that reality is that easy to alter, really. I mean, I know it's possible, but whether or not we can do it at this point in time, or anybody outside the Black Project community or the alien races can do it at this point in time, is a very large question.
Yeah, I think it's about consciousness, period. And the problem is everybody's conscious intent is misdirected so far. I mean, not everybody, but a great majority. So I see that. But I also see if we were to change the frequency to such a high level, we would probably phase a lot of things out. If people are vibrating at the right frequency, and that's what ascension is about, you can literally phase into another reality. You don't die, you just phase. Your molecular structures, you just kind of teleport to another location. And that seems tangible. But what's going on here when they're running so much interference with their technology and their black sciences, plus this propaganda coming from this linear world, that's the biggest inertia. I mean, that's the gravity well we've got to overcome. And to me, it's like I can't have this gravity in me. I mean, I just got to get rid of it. So I'm sure I'm not the only one out there listening that feels that way, but we can't tolerate this. This is non-productive,
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that the society does that are non-productive, unfortunately, and nobody seems to care except people like us.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean by I prefer to stay in the higher orbits. There's no doubt about it. But it is good to talk about some of the things that are happening here, just to cue people that, it's kind of like a glitch in the matrix. And I'm sure most people realize that the glitch is really out of control right now. This is a matrix that's really fractal oriented and breaking apart. But it's something to look at. When you look at some of these crafts and some of these ships, you've seen UFOs yourself, right?
Yeah, several, many.
Okay. Did you ever notice anybody in them, or were they manned or were they unmanned?
Well, the larger ones are usually manned. I know that seeing a UFO fly by, I've never seen like people at the portholes or anything. Although some people have photographed that, like Dr. Leir had some photographs like that once, but that's another story. But I know they're manned from remembering what happened during experiences under regression. I remembered going inside and seeing people inside, aliens inside. So
Were you alone when you went on that craft?
Yeah, most of the time I was alone. I remember being with other people other times though, but I almost always went onto the craft by myself.
That's interesting. I always wondered if there were groups of people on the craft when people get pulled into these things, if they see a group of people with them, or if it's always solo.
So they have mass abductions for sure. I mean, the first experience I remembered under regression was very disturbing because they just pulled in hundreds of people from a mass abduction from LA and wanted me to help them with some medical procedures. And remembering it was, I've gotten used to it now, but at the time remembering it was very disturbing.
That's very, very interesting. Well, I mean, I am assuming that can happen again insofar as in a critical situation that they might be able to pull people up or teleport everybody.
Yeah, they have transporters like on Star Trek, but they try to use those sparingly as well because they're more dangerous than the alternative of just using a tractor beam to pull people up, and they can pull people right through ceilings and walls and things like that. And that's less dangerous than using transporters, but they will do it if they have to. They told me that's one way that they messed up their DNA is by overuse of transporters long ago.
Right, makes sense. Well, yeah,
that makes sense. Doing.
Right. And what year did you really start getting?
Reminds me of us how we're doing a lot of things like GMOs where we don't know what we're doing yet. And
we're
doing it anyway.
Trial by fire to some degree. Yeah, it's unnecessary. A lot of that stuff is just so unnecessary. But what year did you really start getting hardcore connections insofar as being abducted or pulled into certain things?
Well, I knew from the time I was a kid that there was a good chance that I was involved with the aliens or an abductee or experiencer or whatever you want to call it. But I never really believed that they could alter your memory to this extent, and so I didn't believe it all the way, especially not without any kind of hardcore proof. But when I got married and had kids, the level of activity increased dramatically, and I started to get proof, like when they put an implant in my toe. So at that point, I started investigating and got regressed and did a lot of things with the UFO community, like seeing their craft in orbit with third generation night vision binoculars and interfacing with other people who had similar experiences, and I've gotten enough information to at least get the bare bones of what's happening on these experiences with me. And
yeah, it's very interesting.
Opened up a whole new world. I mean, like I tell people that there's a heck of a difference between strongly suspecting that something like this is going on with you and knowing for sure.
Exactly, and you have a lot of evidence and proof about that. I still think you'd make a really good bio. I mean, if you could do a book on your own life and experience. I know you're doing the survivor's manual, but what you've been through is very, it's very significant. It's something that people might want to take a good look at and read.
Yeah, I've got I've got material for 4 or 5 books at least, I think.
Oh, yeah. I always tell people to write books. I'm not trying to push books, but I love to read anyways. And I always believe that everybody has an excellent life experience. Most people do. And if you have something where you're being pulled into something that's very exotic and extraterrestrial, it's nice because a lot of people can read it and then correlate their own experiences. Not that they're trying to copy them, but sometimes people have similar experiences, especially when it comes to abductees or contactees.
Yeah, a lot of experiencers are waking up to the fact that they are experiencers and getting more memories and more data about what's going on at this point in time. I think it's part of the awakening that the aliens want to happen towards the end of this cycle of civilization, which this cycle of civilization is coming to an end, in my opinion.
Oh, I think so. I think mankind's going extinct myself. I really do. I'm sorry, but I see it.
They won't go extinct, but normal humans are going to be reduced to a small number and saved for zoos or whatever. But They're just too. They're not. They have no commercial value on the galactic market anymore, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they were originally designed as slaves to mine gold, most likely, and they're just too violent and too lower vibration, and too dumb, frankly, to be of much value right now. And the aliens are trying to genetically engineer the entire human race, but they've especially engineered they've done more engineering to the people that they're interested in, like us.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. Well, I see it as a self-destruct sequence at this point in the continuum, and it really is about people stepping up and being more enlightened, and that takes work and it takes personal choice, personal free will. And I see, they could choose to be good people or bad people each day, and they want to subscribe to this agenda. They just want to act like crazy people. So I don't know what to say anymore about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, the crazy people are actually going against their own agenda a lot of times. Like for example, when you pointed out that they want segregation again. Well, they acted like before, like anybody that wanted segregation was a totally bad person and evil and everything else. Now, because they've decided to act even crazier, then they're going back on their own teachings that go back 50 years or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense what they're doing.
No, it basically sets them back in a very bad space, if you ask me. And, like I said, I've always been nice to everybody. I don't care about color of anything. I just want everybody to behave themselves and act like normal, civil people. I mean, or enlightened beings. And I guess that's too much to ask. Is it really that hard?
I mentioned to somebody on Facebook. I mean, this ceased, in my opinion, to be about color 40, 50 years ago. It's a clash of cultures now and a clash of philosophies.
Well, and even that, I don't even know if it's culture anymore, because there's no culture associated with Islam. That's just plain ignorance and violence. I mean, there's no culture there. I look at culture like beautiful, like Hawaiians or Asian culture, certain things that are, some more artistic, or I just don't see it. There's just too much primordial behavior coming out of these people. But I think a lot of it, like we had touched on, is socially engineered, and it's just about the wrong information being taught. And these people, these professors who are really just rotten apples. I don't know why they call them professors. They're not even smart people. I mean, they're just teaching their children and teaching the students a bunch of ignorance.
They're radicals is all they are. I mean, they're maybe a little above average intelligence, but they're certainly not brilliant or anything.
No.
They're just radicals.
Well, that's the problem. Too many stupid people in the illusion of power and control, or in charge and promoted. And that's the problem. I mean, that was that politically correct thing, because they would promote all these people that weren't worth a damn. They give them these really good jobs, and then they sit there and they don't know how to teach, or they don't know how to do their job. And it's obvious. And now you see the byproduct of it.
As I was saying before, they're political hacks, not people who deserve jobs.
No, I totally agree. And those of us who've been doing our work independently, I don't know what to say anymore about a lot of this stuff. All I know is that spirituality, consciousness, and who we are as multidimensional beings is the key to who we are, period. And that if people can't understand why they're here, and they can't understand how to communicate, and they think that everything is texting or sitting there and screaming at the top of their lungs, because they see a Trump sign, I don't know what to say anymore to them. I really don't. That's a mental disorder.
Very much so.
Crazy. Just crazy stuff.
They act crazy. I mean, they're yelling and screaming and saying things that don't make much sense or any sense, and they're definitely acting pretty crazy, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I think that it'll self-implode at some point in the continuum. That's the way I see it. But in the meantime, it's kind of a bummer that I would have said by now, we're in 2017, we're heading to 2018 in the illusion of space and time. I would have thought we would have been way beyond this, this kind of, kindergarten bull crap that's going on. So as a society, as a race of people,
Well, I think on the one hand, some people are ascending, and more people are descending. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay with that. Let them do that. Let them self-implode. I just don't want to be part of it. I don't want to be a participant with it. And I expect that this government, this new administration, has to address these things, because we can't be pulled down by ignorance, and that means global ignorance, especially pertaining to the agenda that's going on with the EU and the UN right now, because there's so much corruption with that right now, so much sabotage.
They need to really do something about this, but at least they've stopped the Occupy movement.
Yeah, that's true too, isn't it?
One good thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that one. Yeah. So, are you doing any speaking? I know we touched on this a little bit. Now, what do you have planned for public speaking, or anything at all?
That conference that Lorian's putting on later in the year, I'm going to probably speak at that, and I've committed to go to the Watchtower UFO convention in Colorado, and I'm gonna try to see if I can speak at that. And,
Excellent. Where's that going to be? Is that going to be what location?
I forget the actual location, but it's near the Four Corners area.
Okay.
The Four Corners area, and it's near there's a valley in there. There's a lot of UFO sightings, and there's a town nearby. I forget the name of it.
Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. I can't remember right now.
I'll get it to you later. I can't remember right now.
Excellent.
Maybe I just look it up on the net right here. I'm in front of the computer now.
Yeah, Google it when all else fails, right?
When all else fails, yeah.
Yep, there's no doubt. So a lot of people, now you see an increase of people asking you to do implant analysis scans. Have you received more and more people contacting you out of the blue insofar as getting picked up lately?
Yeah.
So it's increased. You think it's increased? Yeah. It seems like it has. And I know that they say the UFO sightings have gone up to some degree.
Yeah, they're always going up.
Right. And also, from what I understand, California, your state is actually one of the biggest states for, or a hotspot for UFO activity, whether it's ours or not.
Oh, so that's California is one of the biggest hotspots in the world for UFOs.
Right. So basically, you're right in the midst of the whole thing over there.
Okay.
Which is very interesting.
The conference is in the San Luis Valley.
Okay.
It's in Saguache County.
Okay.
And
very interesting.
It's probably out in the sticks. It doesn't say any town that's near.
Okay, well, keep us informed on it, and I'll help you promote it when you're out here, because it'd be nice to see you doing some presentations of some kind. Or are you just going to do implant analysis scan?
I'm going to try to do a presentation. Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd like to see you doing that.
I want to do at least one more this year besides that too, but that'll be to be announced.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a presentation at Misha Johnston's UFO group too about 3 months ago.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's good.
The same presentation that Dr. Leir and I did at the UFO Congress in 2013.
Oh, nice. Oh, I'm glad you did that then. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're carrying the torch. You're still moving on with it.
Very well received.
Was it?
Yeah, she said it was very well received.
Good.
So,
yeah.
And,
that's wonderful.
It contained a lot of good information that I don't think anybody's heard before.
No, because most of the stuff that they're talking about now is either monkey see, monkey do. Somebody's repeating some information that's not really theirs, or it's been edited or censored. Disinformation, for what I've seen.
Yeah, and one complaint that I've heard about the UFO community is that it's the same people saying the same things over and over and over again, and what I have to say is relatively fresh, and I'm trying to keep things, moving and keep people from getting stale and keep new stuff coming in. So,
right. No, I think it's good.
I don't aspire to be one of those people that says the same thing all the time.
Oh no, you're not like that at all. And plus, you're science. I mean, you're point blank, black and white science. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You talk about what's really going on, and you have the expertise in the background. Some of these people just steal everybody's information and experiences and run with it. I mean, I see that all the time.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. They're making all this money. It's just being talked about.
I know one guy. I'll tell you his name privately, but I know one guy that befriends experiencers to get their stories, and then just kind of puts it out there and like he has something to do with it, and then goes on to the next person.
That's terrible.
So, yeah.
Sorry, that's just not okay.
A lot of people are like that in the UFO community.
Yeah. Well, they're making a lot of money at someone else's expense.
Enough where you have to be careful. Go ahead.
Right. Well, that's why I always say, if you're a contactee or an abductee, put your own book out, do your own thing. Don't give it to other people. Don't let them steal your information. And it's just a, it's common courtesy, in my opinion. I just think it is, anyways. I just wouldn't do that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in putting other people's stuff out. My book is based on my personal experience. It's not based on other people. So it's as simple as that. So, yeah, it's just really interesting. If you hear my dog in the background, he's throwing a fit. He wants to go outside in a minute here. But so, well, it's wonderful to have you on tonight. I know we have about, I don't know, maybe 5-7 minutes here, plus or minus. So anything you want to leave the listeners with tonight? I mean, anything you want to touch on that we didn't really cover? I know we got a little political. I did anyway, in hour one. But anything you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah. Maybe talk a little bit about what it's like to be on board an alien craft.
Yeah.
They have they have huge rooms with high ceilings. A lot of them have high ceilings, and uh, um, there's light panels where light seems to come from everywhere at once, and those are like rooms where they do medical procedures or where they need a lot of light for something. But in the rooms where they stay, they like it dark. They're nocturnal creatures for the most part. They use a dim kind of orangish illumination, and they don't need much light to see. And I've noticed that a lot of experiencers don't need much light to see either. So I think we get that from them. I don't know about you, but I can't stand bright noonday sun. I mean, I can stand it.
Does it bother your eyes?
I don't enjoy it. Yeah, it bothers my eyes big time.
So you have a light sensitivity, yeah. And, interesting.
There's often symbols on the walls, like kind of like an elongated triangle with two dots underneath it. I think that's a symbol of their space fleet, and the symbol of the Gray Alliance is often on their spacesuits, and their spacesuits are often like very cobalt blue material that's in color a lot like the dye I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a smart fabric of some kind, and there's the symbol of the Gray Alliance on it is three orange circles arranged in an equilateral triangle.
Wow, you get a lot of details.
Yeah, I remember all this under regression.
Oh my goodness! I mean, that's really specific.
And there's no doors, or very few, on the craft as we use them. Either the metal actually opens up quickly, or you can actually just walk through the metal itself, and it's like taffy or something. You can you can push a button and it's solid, and push another button and it's walkable. Where you can go
that sounds holographic almost.
It's not holographic. The metal's actually there, but it's moved aside a little bit in pore space so that it's porous enough where you can walk through it, but it still keeps the air in.
Very interesting.
And
wow.
They use gravity beams, force fields, and the gravity beams are a lot like on Star Trek, where it's a beam that pulls you up that comes out from the bottom of the craft, and it's usually slightly glowing, either blue or green. And UFOs, they're not unarmed. A lot of people think they're unarmed, but they have some weapons. Like the tractor beam can be used to tear apart an aircraft at a range of several miles if they want to. I think they've
Very
shown
interesting.
a restraint being chased by our military. Our military has been at war with them for years, while the Black Project community just wants to work with them to get their technology. They also have a beam weapon that's got an invisible beam. It's like a phaser on Star Trek that disintegrates things. I think that's what they used to blow up that SpaceX rocket. I'm not sure it was them. I think it might have been a similar craft from our government, or one that was given to them by the aliens. But in any event, that beam weapon was what I'm talking about.
What did the craft? Oh, go ahead.
I encourage everybody to look up that film of the SpaceX rocket on the pad getting blown up by that sphere.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out. I don't remember seeing that footage. I don't think I looked at it. So that sounds interesting, though. Yeah, no such thing as coincidence there. Well, I knew it was sabotage. I wasn't sure where it came from, but I figured it was sabotage when I heard about it.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt it's sabotage now.
Wow. So what did the craft look like the exterior of it? What color was it? Do you remember?
They usually look like polished aluminum. Not always, but usually.
Okay.
Sometimes they have a black coating on them. But usually they're like polished aluminum, and they're usually disc-shaped, but not always. I've been on cigar-shaped craft as well, and triangular craft.
Wow, and that's all through regression?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's really interesting. You have a lot of details, and that's what I mean, but I don't think people can make that crap up. I'm sorry. But when you have that kind of detail, it's coming from somewhere. You know what I mean?
I hesitate to say these things, but I think it needs to get out there. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't know that for sure," and I readily admit No, I don't know it for sure. I mean, there's screen memories. There's possibility that I'm just remembering it wrong, or the aliens have messed with my memory somehow. But my memories are similar enough to a lot of other people's where I think it is a body of evidence that needs to get out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. Well, we're just about out of time here. I want to thank you so much for joining us, Steve. Like I said, you're my science officer. I just love having you on, and I appreciate all your information and insight. You're an incredible person. So I encourage everybody to donate to your website and get you all the assistance you need to keep doing your research.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful because you have a
Everybody
lot
out
of
there that's listening, we appreciate your interest, and have a nice evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and everybody in the chat room. And stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mickey coming up next to sail you on to the night from Down Under with their awesome show as they always do. And they always have something wonderful to talk about. And make sure everybody stays safe out there. I think we're just about out of time here in the Illusion of, but I do want to thank you again, Steve. It's been great to have you on. And hopefully I'll touch base with you and I'll get to meet you soon again. I know it's been a while since we've seen each other, so hopefully I'll get to touch base with you at one of these conventions or something.
When did we meet the first time? 2010?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was about then. Yeah. Yep. So we're out of time here. All right, everybody, have a great week. And thank you again, Steve. It's an awesome show. Thanks for being on.
All right, thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a great week.